Thank you. So your Zoom will probably ask you for permission to keep you on as this is recorded. We don't normally record our Leadership Learning Lab learning sessions just so folks can, feel comfortable sharing confidential information or anything like that while we're together and be open in those conversations. But for this this information session, we like to record that. So if someone missed it, we can send it out and they can learn more about the program that way. So we're happy to have you here. We're excited that you're considering joining us for our year of learning, connection, and community. And we're looking forward to sharing a little bit about Leadership Learning Lab and answering all of your questions. And really seeing if this is a good fit for you. We know that leadership is intentional, but we also know that it takes time and energy and commitment to participate in something that's really deep and transformative like this. And so we encourage you to ask all the questions that are coming to mind for you, and really, we can help you see if this is a good fit for you this year. So we are recruiting right now, as you know, for Leadership Learning Lab. Applications are due June 25th. And then we would let folks know mid-July and start the program in September. So before we get going, would just encourage you again, if you're joining with video off, if you're able to join with video on, we love to have that for a greater sense of community. When we come together for our learning sessions, some of them are virtual, and we do ask for folks to join with video on. If you're not able today, that's okay, we understand. I will have a few places where we have room for discussion in this large group, and we will have one small breakout. So in those, we just encourage you to make room for all voices. Take the space to ask for what you need, ask your questions for sure, and leave some space for others to do the same. I am going to show our agenda here for the day. Next. There we go. All right, so we are going to start with a little connection, as we always do with our Leadership Learning Lab session. So you'll get a little feel for how we facilitate. Then we'll give a little bit of background about Leadership Learning Lab. Some of that information is in all of the recruitment material on the website, but want to just kind of touch on the high points there. And then we have a panel of alumni that are with us today. We have Jean, Amy, Onelia, and Kendra all joining. And we have a few questions that we'll be asking them, and encourage you to ask them your own questions as well to learn directly from folks that have been through the program. And Courtney, who's on our team now, she also is an alum, so she can join in some of that if you'd like to, Courtney, although we have her busy doing a lot of behind the scenes stuff here on the session today. And then just some open Q&A. Anytime today, if a question comes to mind, pop it in the chat. When we're doing that Q&A, encourage you to just unmute and ask questions too. The group is not that large, it's not going to be disruptive. Feel free to unmute and pipe up if something comes to mind for you. Does that sound okay to you? Give me a little thumbs up if that all sounds all right to you. All right, if there's anything that's missing, pop it in the chat and we'll make sure we incorporate that. So for our little, I don't know if you're seeing that warning there, for our connection, one of the reasons we facilitate the way we do, the Leadership Learning Lab is not just about, learning new content about leadership, but also about making connections with folks in our communities that are all doing good work similar to yourselves, and folks in other Northern Michigan communities that are part of Leadership Learning Lab. And so whenever we come together, we usually start with a little connection. And that not only allows you to make some of those connections and build your network, but also kind of eases people into a Zoom room, and helps folks get comfortable with each other and comfortable speaking up. So I would love for you to take a peek at this diagram here, and it has 6 different photos for you to choose from. And we'd love for you to identify which picture best represents what you are experiencing as a leader today, and what is drawing you to the Leadership Learning Lab. Most likely those two are related. We'd love for you to take a second to look at that, and then I will give you a little background music. And one of the things we like to do is to have folks have an opportunity to reflect individually before going into a breakout and talking in a group and then coming back. So I'll give you a minute to think about that. Feel free to jot down a couple notes if you like. Which picture best represents what you're experiencing as a leader today and what is drawing you to Leadership Learning Lab? Okay, in just a moment, you are going to be invited into a breakout with two other people to just compare notes. Which picture did you choose and why, and what's drawing you to Leadership Learning Lab? You'll have just 8 minutes in this breakout, just a quick little taste for what this is like. And when you come back together, we'd love to hear a little bit about what came up for you. Courtney, you can open those rooms whenever you're ready.
Perfect. If this is your first time in a Zoom breakout room, it should automatically take you there. You may have to click one button. If you get lost at any point, you can always use the original link that you joined this session with to come back to the main room. And when the breakout is open, you'll closed, you'll come right back to this session. So you shouldn't have to do anything. We will see you all in 8 minutes. And actually, hold on just one moment. A few of you are moving around, and there we go. And for my folks who are on the panel, you can choose to stay in the main room, or I have the panel, all of you together. You can go chat with each other in your own breakout room. So see you back in 8 minutes.
Thank you. Enjoy your conversation.
Get lost in the ocean. 7 billion swimmers, man, I'm going through the motions. Hit up a flare, need love and devotion. Trade it for some faces that I'll never know, notion. Maybe I should try to find the old me. Take me to the places and the people that know me. Trying to just connect, thinking maybe you could show me. There's so many people here, then why am I so lonely? Can I get a connection? Can I get a connection?
Welcome back. Waiting for everyone to trickle in from their breakout rooms.
Real friends, good friends, hard to find, let's face it. By the perfect time when there's a
Right, I
flood
think that's everyone. How was your conversation? Good, I see some smiles. I promise we give you more time than that in Leadership Learning Lab when we're asking you to answer some questions and compare notes and all of that. But that'll give you a quick sense of, we like to make sure we have a little connection at the beginning, and then throughout the facilitation, there's always opportunities to chat in the large group and a lot of those smaller group breakouts to make sure you can really dig into some of the content in smaller groups too. So whatever you're most comfortable with in terms of like, you don't have to speak in front of the large group when we're in a Zoom room. You always know there's going to be an opportunity with a small group as well, and to contribute in chat. All right, so would love to hear from your group just a couple of things that came up for you. Did you see any commonalities with the folks in your room? Was there something that was interesting to you, or anything you'd like to share about what is drawing you to Leadership Learning Lab?
I'll go.
Natalie, thank you.
In my group, I think one of the common themes was just finding a balance. Everybody is so busy and has so much going on. and wanting to do your best, but also, finding a balance between self-care, feeling good about where you're at, but being able to do your job efficiently. And a lot of us might wear multiple hats. You have your job, and then maybe you're on a board for another organization, or you volunteer somewhere, and you have obviously a home life. And so just finding a way to help it all mesh together and be efficient and happy.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that, Natalie. Could you raise your hand if that type of idea came up in your breakout? Yeah, quite a few of you. Great. Thank you. It can be a lot. It can be a lot to be a leader and doing good work that you love, but also trying to keep it all together and manage everyone's expectations and balance it all. Yeah, thank you. Kristen, I saw you unmute.
Yeah, in our group, we all picked different pictures, but we all kind of had the theme of growth. Regardless of where we were in our career or what we did in our role, that was kind of a theme, even though we picked 3 different pictures.
Wow, love that. Love that. Wonderful. Well, we hope that Leadership Learning Lab would be a great way for you to all continue growing. We do invite leaders at all different sort of levels. We see leadership as a sort of a way of being, not a position that you hold. And so you'll find you're able to connect with folks from a variety of different levels and learn more from folks that are potentially more experienced in an area similar to yourself, or learn some different things from fresh ideas from folks that are newer to their roles. And that combination has been really nice. All right, so I'm going to share a little bit of background about Leadership Learning Lab, and then we'll get into our alumni panel and questions. Again, anytime something's just coming to mind, pop it in the chat. If it's something we're going to cover, we might not answer it the moment it goes into the chat. We'll weave it in a conversation, but pop it in while it's on your mind so you don't forget. All right, so we'll give a little overview here. One thing we wanted to make sure we acknowledged right away is our funder collaborative that funds this work, the Leadership Learning Lab. The lab is actually has come to be initially by some community foundations in smaller rural communities in northern Lower Michigan here, that saw some professional development that was happening, particularly in Traverse City, and thinking like, oh, how could we bring some of that to some of these other communities? That's kind of hard for folks to be driving into Traverse every time something great is coming on. And slowly that network of funders kind of came together, and we created the Leadership Learning Lab to take place initially at 4 different sites, now at 5 different sites in northern Lower Michigan. We'll show you that in just a moment. And we have the Fry Foundation, Rotary Charities, and 11 different community foundations that have been supporting this work. And it's been a really neat sort of collaborative of their own. They're learning how to collaborate with each other as well. And it's been really nice to be supported by them, not just financially, but in helping us design programming and that kind of thing. So you'll notice in the recruitment materials for wherever you're located, there are particular community foundation partners. They're supporting that work, again, along with Fry Foundation and Rotary Charities funding as a whole. These are the sites that we work with. And so you'll see site 1 is over here in kind of the lighter green, Manistee, Oceana, and Mason counties. Site 2 is up here, Emmett and Charlevoix counties. Site 3 is this sort of eastern side of the northern Lower, serving a lot of counties over there between the Otsego, Gaylord. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, Otsego is Gaylord. Otsego, the Community Foundation for Northeast Michigan, which is in Alpena, and Roscommon, covering all of those. Site 4 is Mount Pleasant and Cadillac area here in Wexford and Isabella. Sorry. Those 2 are joined together. I shouldn't be clicking on it in that way. We don't have we're not recruiting for a cohort for this next round at that site, but likely will be the following year. And so if you know folks in those 2 communities, they can sign up to be on a waiting list for that site. And then site 5 is funded by Rotary Charities and the Grand Traverse Regional Community Foundation, and serves our 5-county area here. And so as we're meeting together in Leadership Learning Lab, when we have in-person sessions, you'd be meeting with folks from your own site. And when we're meeting virtually, you'd be meeting with folks from across all 5 sites. So you have that combination of getting to know people in your own community a little deeper, being together in person. We have some learning pods between sessions. You'd be with folks from your own site for that. And then when we come together virtually, you'd be learning in the Zoom room and in all the breakouts with folks from across Northern Lower Michigan. All right. So as we're designing Leadership Learning Lab, there are a few things that we're trying to do. These are the outcomes that we've identified. It's designed to help you become a more self-aware, adaptive, collaborative, and resilient leader. It's designed to help you manage your time, reduce your overwhelm, and focus on what is most important. Designed to increase your awareness of power, identity, and equity. Designed to develop improved communication and collaborative skills. We explore a variety of topics to help support your nonprofit, government agency, or mission-driven business, depending who you're representing. Sometimes several of those, as one you mentioned earlier. You end the program with a toolkit of practical tools and resources to help support that work. And really an important part of this is, again, developing that network of support with the Leadership Learning Lab community. So that would be all the folks from this year's cohort. And then when you sort of graduate from that, you're also part of our alumni program with Leadership Learning Lab. And so we've been running this program since 2018. So there are a number of folks who've had over 300 people participate in this. It's evolved a little bit over time. It was all in person, and then during COVID, it was all virtual. And now we have this hybrid program, but folks that really speak the same language as you when you're finishing up Leadership Learning Lab that you can reach out to and connect with over time. We have, in the words of our participants, there are a few things that we might want to share. There's lots of information on the website too, but this is a nice quote, I think. Participating in the Leadership Learning Lab helps deepen your self-awareness as a leader, how your leadership style affects your team, and how to identify and focus on the work that's truly transformational. And we have many more of those as well. But just, some folks really feel like the Leadership Learning Lab has come at a time that helps support them, perhaps through a difficult time, perhaps as they're entering a new position, perhaps as they're thinking about changing positions, and really being able to connect with folks around some of these concerns or challenges when it comes to leadership. Also, really helping the organization that you're working for is listed in here, and the commitment that you have to your work. We know that leadership today is different than it has been in the past, perhaps. Traditional leadership style sometimes is not the most effective now. We know that we're really well connected with folks across the state, the country, the world. We have everything available at our fingertips. The traditional sort of command and control style of leadership is not always what's needed today. Now we are really being asked to be more adaptive and asked to be more collaborative, working together. We don't need to have all the answers, but we do need to help facilitate our teams, our people. We do need to connect with others to help work toward our goals. And so we really try to focus on that sort of adaptive style of leadership. The format of the Leadership Learning Lab combines a few things. One is our monthly learning sessions, and those are a combination of in-person and virtual. We have 4 in-person sessions, and we ask you to join at least 5 of the 7 virtual sessions that we have. And that's so you can pick and choose if there's 1 or 2 that don't apply to you, depending on your role. Or if you have a schedule conflict or something, you can kind of work around that. But we do ask that you commit to coming to 5 of the 7 virtual and to come to all 4 of the in-person in your own communities. We have some individual reflection. We have some application sort of homework. We don't really call it homework too often, but that you'll work on individually, and some prep work for the upcoming session. So a little bit of work in between. We have some small group learning pods where you're networking more closely with just a couple of folks, and ongoing support from our team. The learning sessions that we have, you'll see listed in the recruitment materials. We have a little kickoff and orientation. That's a little shorter. That's a couple hours long. And then we meet in person for understanding your leadership style, and we do a DISC assessment before that session. And then we start to move through some of our core content areas: time management, mission-driven storytelling. The ones in bold here are what we're planning to offer in person this year. So Intro to Adaptive Leadership is an in-person session. We have a diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging session, facilitating inclusive conversations. So sort of meeting agendas, how to make meetings more meaningful and facilitate those conversations that will bring out the best in a team. Practices of adaptive leaders, so sort of adaptive leadership too. Board development and fund development sessions, collaborative skills. And then at the end, we have a goal setting and celebration, again, back in person. And we have our community foundation partners join us for lunch on that last day, and sort of look back at the year that we've just had, and look ahead at what you might want to achieve, and celebrate all of you. We actually just finished that for this last cohort last week. So we've been celebrating folks and are looking forward to getting started with a new cohort here as well. Oh. That's not moving anymore. Interesting. All right. I'm going to stop my share and start it again for a second. See if I can get that guy going. All right, there you go. And we have to be adaptive when things don't go our way, like our tech once in a while. Oops, now I'm sharing the wrong thing. Let me get back on there. There we go. All right, we're back on. They just wanted you to see those again. Whoops, there we go. All right, and our facilitation team that are offering all of those sessions, Lucille and I offer several of those. Courtney is on all of our virtual sessions. And then we have a number of folks on our facilitation team with expertise in a variety of those different content areas that you'll have some great interactions with, and folks that you can then refer to in the future and reach out to when you need support. Really great team. Some of them are local. All of us here are in northern Lower Michigan. Frida and Rayanne are down in Detroit, and Rob joins us from Austin, Texas, but he joins for a virtual session. The facilitators have also shared that this is a really meaningful program for them, not only to connect with each other, connect with you all, and to just be part of something bigger. It's kind of a neat program with the partners and the facilitators and participants all working together and learning together as we go. So you might be wondering if this is sort of for you, if you're eligible for a Leadership Learning Lab, those kinds of things. And again, we welcome leaders at all levels, from nonprofit organizations, government agencies, mission-driven businesses, and tribal nations. It started off as a nonprofit program specifically, and so we do have more nonprofit leaders than folks from government and business, but the content is created in a way that you can pick and choose which sessions work for you and make sure you tailor that program for yourself. It's really nice to have that combination of folks from different sectors learning together and working together in Leadership Learning Lab. There are a few commitments and expectations that we just like to make sure folks are super clear on when we get started. Again, attending the kickoff and orientation, the 4 in-person sessions, 5 of the 7 virtual sessions, which we talked about. And again, from beginning to end, those are all 3 hours each, the learning sessions, whether we're in person or virtual. And then there's some time between sessions for, completing homework and prep work and meeting with learning pods. And so 3 to 6 hours between sessions is what you could expect. And we ask every year at the end with the alumni, like, was that about the right amount? Should we adjust that at all? And they say that's right on. So you could expect 3 to 6 hours. We won't be, sort of surprising you with unexpected assignments or anything like that. We do ask that you complete a pre-program survey that gives us a little bit of background about yourself and your organization. We do a DISC assessment, and we do some evaluation surveys, just short ones after each session, like 5-minute surveys, and then one longer one at the end of the program. So that's one of the commitments that you make if you sign up for Leadership Learning Lab, because we use that information, of course, to improve the program, and we share all of that data with our partners. And we do ask that you contribute to the group conversations. That could be in the large room, it could be in your breakouts, and that you sort of approach this with a curious mind, an open heart, and that you honor confidentiality for the folks that you're working with. And because of that confidentiality, we don't record the learning sessions. And so we do require that participation. So you'll want to look closely at the dates and times that we have listed for your site, and make sure that you're able to commit to those when you sign up. As I mentioned, we just finished with our 2023-2024 cohort last week. So we're collecting all of their evaluation data for the end of the year. So this is from the year before, but everyone agreed that they gained a suite of practical tools and resources. 98% said they were more more self-aware, adaptive, and resilient leader. And 98% were likely or very likely to recommend to a friend or colleague. So we're proud of those numbers to share with you. And again, applications are due by June 25th, and we'll make sure we share all of the details in the chat here while you're with us today. But with that, we'd love to, are there any questions that are coming up immediately that we want to address before we pop into the panel? Courtney, was there anything in the chat first?
We just had one great one come in from Nate. He is asking what a DISC assessment is.
Oh, thanks, Nate. Lucille, do you want to take that one? Get your voice
Sure.
in there.
Yeah, thank you for that, Nate. So the DISC assessment is a tool that takes a look at your primary ways of interacting or communicating with others. What tends to be your primary emphasis or tendencies in the way you communicate. And it's broken down into 4 different styles, one being dominance, influence is the second, conscientiousness is a third, and I'm drawing a blank right now.
Steadiness.
And steadiness is another one. So it takes a look at where you land. And what we do is it gives you a picture of yourself and a better understanding and increasing your awareness of how you relate to the world, so you can better understand how to relate to others who may be different than you.
So we do that assessment before the first session, and then the first in-person session is really focused on exploring your own DISC style, sort of self-awareness, and then exploring the style of the other folks in your cohort and learning how to flex your communication style to better communicate with others. So it's a fun thing to do to kind of get to know each other in that first session, but also give some really good tools that we carry throughout the Leadership Learning Lab and that you can take back into your own organization. Great. Any other initial questions before we hop into the alumni panel? Okay, great. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Nate.
I had one other quick question. I was looking through the cohort lists as prepping right before this, and I noticed that last year you guys had a huge increase. You had way more than in years past. Do you have an idea as to why that is?
Were you saying the total number of people involved?
Yeah, at least that's what I saw when I was looking through it really quickly. Maybe I misunderstood what I was looking at.
I think maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that is a good question about the number of people engaged in the program. Typically, your cohort, your sort of place-based cohort at your site will be 15 people or less. We sometimes are up to 17 in Traverse City. We just get a lot more applications here. So 17 or less, I should say. But typically 15 or less in your local cohort, and then all of those folks together. We get about 70 or so once we combine all sites together. Great. Good question. All right. Lucille is going to host the alumni panel here. I'm just going to get folks in the spotlight so you can see the panel and Lucille. And Lucille, if you want to just sort of
I'll kind of
introduce the panel, and we'll have the panelists introduce themselves in just one.
Yes. So we thought it was really important for you to hear directly from those who have been through the program and hear, their own words and describe what it was like from them. So feel free to put questions directly into the chat, and we will have time for you to ask anything else that may be coming up after we've gone through a little bit of rounds of me asking some questions. So you can see here we have Kendra. Kendra, you were part of the program. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from and when you might have been part of the program?
Sure. Thanks, Lucille. My name is Kendra Luda. I currently am at Rotary Charities, so I'm here as alumni, but also as a funder. So thank you all for joining. I participated in 2020, and we were supposed to get started in March of 2020. So we got delayed a little bit by something called COVID, but we ended up having it, and I think it got postponed to spring that year. And it was all virtual, and it was an amazing experience. I was telling my alumni group, I said, it was when I realized that connection can happen virtually and this can be done well. So it was a really inspiring thing for me to experience. When I participated in in Leadership Learning Lab, I was actually at a different organization. So a lot has changed for me since then. So definitely transformational for me.
Great. Jean, would you like to introduce yourself and give us a little bit of some of your thoughts on what was significant about the program for you?
Of course. I just graduated from the Leadership Learning Lab a couple of weeks ago. I'm in the Charlevoix-Emmett, Northern Antrim County, so I'm Site 2. And I didn't know, I think one of the biggest things for me is, I think, and Colleen said it, like leadership as a way of being, not necessarily as the title you hold or the position you have. And so I think it's kind of been transformative for me to be a part of this group of leaders and really getting to get a good sense of how that leadership model has changed and shifted, and being led by the leaders of the Leadership Learning Lab facilitation team has just been incredible. And I can't really say enough about it. I'm telling everybody how great this experience was and encourage everyone to step in and try it out, no matter where you feel you might be at that leadership level right now. You're gonna go up and up with this information.
We'll take a little deeper dive into that too, Jean, when let's bring Amy and Onelia into the conversation here. Amy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, Amy Hartzog. I am with Site 5, so here in Grand Traverse County. I work for TART Trails as a trail planner, and I was just super excited to be part of the Learning Leadership Lab. Courtney, Colleen, and Lucille do an incredible job of keeping us on point, and the training starts at an agreed upon time, and we finish at an agreed upon time. And so that they set out the expectations, and just a well-oiled machine, I should say. And it's just a great opportunity for growth and getting to meet people within your own site, and then also with the remote learning, being able to meet folks from other counties nearby as well. It's incredible.
Nice. Thank you, Amy. Onelia, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Good afternoon. I'm Onelia Gronstall. I'm in Site 1, which is Mason, Oceana, and Manistee counties. And I believe this was our first year as a region, as a site to participate. So I got to be part of the original cohort of at least Mason County. And I hesitate to say all this because I want you all to know just how deeply I feel about this. I've told Lucille and Colleen many times, this was the best training I think I have ever participated in as a professional. The staff is so in tune with the challenges of leadership. it's a cliche, but it is so true that leadership is lonely. And to have a network of people who really understood, but also gave space to wrestle with issues, wrestle with challenges. And the expectation at the end is we would walk out looking different than we came in. And so we didn't come in with all the answers, and every topic was so timely. It was amazing to me that there was not a topic where I thought, oh, that doesn't apply to me this time. Every single topic is something that I took away. And in our alumni breakout group, Kendra shared with us, she's 4 years out and she still goes back and reflects on what she learned 4 years later. And I'm just a couple months out, or not even, I think we graduated, just a few weeks ago. And I know that I will say the same thing for 4 years from now. That's a classroom on my Google Drive that I will refer to constantly. And you cannot ask for a better team of people to really get in the messiness of life and leadership with you than the LLL staff.
Thank you, Onelia. Great. So think back when you were thinking about signing up for the Leadership Learning Lab. What do you wish you knew, or what do you know now, having gone through it? And I will open it up to whoever would like to chime in.
My very first thing, so July 25th is the day that the applications are due, it looks like. I was like, oh, I'll just fill this out in like my last 15 minutes before. No, like take your time on the application. It took a little bit longer than I thought it might. So if you are thinking of applying, go in and open up the application. There's a lot of thought that goes into it, which really helped me right from the initial get-go. Like, oh, okay, this isn't just like a whip out your name and address and they're going to sign you up. There's a process to it, and the intentionality behind it really set the stage for what to expect. So I feel like, and we talked about this during our graduation, our goal setting, it was so well planned and so much thought going in that there wasn't a lot of blind spots. I wasn't kind of overwhelmed or like, oh, I didn't know that I had to know this. But maybe the one thing other than that is it requires a lot of vulnerability and to be prepared to kind of be open with yourself, to kind of share with your team and with your cohort or your site group. And that's where that growth is really happening. So if you're not somebody familiar with that, maybe taking that in consideration.
Thank you, Jean. How about someone else on that question? What do you wish you knew when you signed up? Or what do you know now after having gone through the program?
Well, I would just say, I mean, this is, I think, a good example. There is a lot of interactive opportunities for folks, and I appreciated that it wasn't always on the large panel. We had those little breakout groups where we were with, 2 or 3 other people, and we could share and reflect on learning opportunities. So just understanding that depending on how you learn, there are different ways for you to interact with the group. And so it's not always like big and intimidating, I guess I would say.
Nice, Amy. I think the last question, and I want to be conscious of our time here and make sure that if we have any other questions coming in, but the last question is, if you were thinking about, is the Leadership Learning Lab worth it? What would you say has made a significant difference in the way that you're leading? Well, how has it either helped improve or advanced you or felt like there were big growth spurts for you?
Well, I can start off here if that's okay. So there's 2 that kind of come to mind for me. And one brought this up in the alumni group is this was like the starting point. This was like the start of the journey. And then from this, then just more things added into it where it's just like now 4 years later, kind of pulling all of the other leadership things I've been able to do since then to really grow as an individual has just been, I feel so grateful. But I don't know if it would have started if I wouldn't have had that experience at the very beginning and such a positive experience with that. So it's just really I think Amy said it, sharpening the saw, like each time you're getting a little bit sharper and honing in your skills. So it's been pretty valuable that way. And then I think a specific one, which it's using Leadership Learning Lab and an alumni offering, was about burnout, and really talking about like being burnt out and like what that means to be burnt out. And I know there was like a 4 burner image that comes to mind of like all the burners can't be on high at all times. And then at an alumni gathering, one of the facilitators talked about burnout not just being a workload issue, but being a quality of work issue. Like, so it's not just about, oh, I have too much work on my plate, but it's, the social connections at work and lack of role clarity, lack of communication, and really honoring those things and understanding how they all influence like your work environment and how well you do. And then using the disc to kind of figure out where all those other pieces come in. So I think for me, it's like those 2 pieces that have just kept going the whole way through for me.
Nice. Let me do a check-in with Colleen and Courtney, and we want to hear if you have any questions. Do we have time for a few questions?
Yep, you're doing great. You're doing great. We still have some time. We're happy to hear from the alumni. We don't have any new questions in the chat yet, but also encourage anyone in the room to feel free to unmute and ask questions as we go too.
One of the things that, back to your question, Lucille, about what did you wish you knew? I had a pod group. So your pod group is the group that you meet with after your main session. And you're supposed to meet monthly with your pod. And I had a pod group that I kick myself now that I just didn't wrangle them all together and say, we're going to meet. But it was very difficult to meet. And I think we missed out on a lot of conversation. We would try to check in with each other in our breakout rooms, or if we were in person, we would check in with each other. But that is probably, if I can use the word regret, we didn't put that as a priority in our region because your pods are regional. And we didn't do that as a priority. And I wish I could go back and I have a feeling everybody who should have been in my pod would have said the same thing. I wish we would have gone back and made that a priority of just catching a cup of coffee together or just catching a Zoom call together, because I think that is a very, very important piece to this is we're practicing what we're learning together.
Thank you for that, Onelia. And I heard Colleen mention it today. It's not just the topics we cover and the material we give you, but it's the connection you have with each other and the support and folks bringing in different challenges that they might have, or taking a concept and breaking it apart to saying, how might I apply it? How is that working for you? And those pod assignments are actually intended to have out of classroom time where you can connect and begin to actually put the work into action. So thank you for that.
And I piggyback on that real quick too, because I think it's worth saying, and it is that wish I would have known or understood maybe, because we're all so busy. And one of the first sessions I think is time management. And, so we're like laughing like, oh, we're joining this extra 3-hour meeting every month and we're, putting an extra 6 hours of work out. Well, how am I doing time management? And so it feels like that's just an extra thing and it's too much. It might be too much and nobody's really counting, nobody's checking in on you, but really understanding that the more time you can put into the Leadership Learning Lab sessions and the pod meetings and any of the extra offerings, just it makes a huge difference. And I think having that ability now, I'm excited as an alumni to be able to come back and to continue that, and hearing from Kendra even as a 4-year alumni, the ability to just keep that going, and those pod connections and the site connections. I think when you think about the work a lot of us do, we kind of end up in silos because we are so busy. And so when you branch out and you're talking to somebody from the trails organization or the conservation district or the health department, and this isn't somebody all of a sudden we're making these connections in our community, and for ourselves personally. And I think it's that was maybe the #1 most powerful aspect of this whole experience, is getting to know these people across the state, across our region. And I think it's definitely, even just that right there is valuable. So taking the time, understanding how important it is to carve that time out when you sign up, and building it into your schedule.
Thank you for that, Jean. That certainly fits with April's chat message. Just hearing the phrase that leadership is lonely. Yeah, it's where can I go to get support, or how can I, who do I trust to explore what I'm going through or what I might need, and which is one of our main intents of what we do offer, not only in the learning pods, but during the sessions. So great. All right. Anything else coming up for someone? Is there any other question from those attending today? Anything else you're curious about, want to know more about?
And that can be a question for our alumni panel or just a question about the program in general. First of all, thank you for the alumni folks. I'm going to take you off the spotlight now just so everyone can see each other in case some more questions are coming up. Thank you so much for participating in this way. We really appreciate it. Lucille, you can keep going. I'll get everyone off spotlight so we can see everyone.
Yeah. So we're just.
Can I just say something, Lucille? I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Anyway.
Well, one of the things that I experienced through the Learning Leadership Lab is it felt like work therapy to a certain extent, in a very good way. We don't always have all the tools, and so we're provided with a ton of information and new tools to use, and a better understanding of our work environment and possibly the personalities of folks that we're engaging with. And so it was just great work therapy that you could participate in. So thank you for the therapy. I needed it.
Yeah, you're more than welcome, Amy. Yes, in many ways, it's folks do bring in, and as I heard someone say, you know, there is vulnerability, and you all share some of the same common challenges, and the ability just to problem solve or hear feedback from others, or how might you be handling this, is all part of it. So that really helps.
Rachel had a question in the comments, and I'm reading it. So I just wanted to say another thing I did want to say is that she's asking between big concepts and specific tools. I was so pleased with, you know, I love the umbrella look and the systems look, but the amount of like concrete tools and specific resources and things you can actually leave that session and then actually, you know, do. And I don't know if that answers that question, but I'm an ideas person, but you have to put them into action, right? So having these tools, and there's toolkits like that give you, here's step by step how you can create a statement to provide feedback to somebody, or here's a website that gives you a great, you know, resources for, I don't know, inclusive conversations and tools and kits. And so like I've got my binder right here, right? And oh, you can't see it, but it has all the tools in there, and it's kind of like my little, I don't know, just go-to place to get those specific tools. So I don't know if that helps, Rachel, answer your question.
It's helpful, Jean. Thank you. Yes, on the ground, how do you take action with the material that we're giving you? So we zoom in and we zoom out.
Yeah, I think along those lines too, for Rachel's question, but for all of you, we do have some sort of big picture through lines that we come back to throughout the Leadership Learning Lab, and then each session has its own like really specific outcomes as well. So a few of the through lines we kind of mentioned at the beginning, but adaptive leadership is a big one. DISC we use throughout, time management and being intentional, especially about like intentional about all of those things, intentional about how we're spending our time, intentionality about how we're interacting with each other, intentionality in our collaboration, all of those kinds of things. The diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. We have one session that's focused specifically on that, but being able to have inclusive conversations and bring out the best in other people and not feeling like you need to have all of the answers. That's kind of an adaptive leadership thing. It's kind of an inclusive and belonging thing. But we sort of, there are a lot of themes that kind of carry us through Leadership Learning Lab, along with all of those specific tools for each, you know, specific thing. So that's helpful. Wonderful. Are there any other questions? Feel free to unmute and just pipe up with a question too, if you like, or pop anything in the chat. We will also put the website there that you might need for our, oh, that's funny. We will literally do that at the exact same time, Courtney and I, for the application. And you'll notice in there, there's a kind of a little brochure for each site, just because the dates are different for each site for the in-person sessions. But you know, take a look through those. If any questions come to mind later, you're like, oh, I wish I asked that, feel free to shoot us an email. We're happy to communicate with you before you apply as well.
I have a quick question, if you can hear me.
I can, thank you.
My speaker wasn't working in the breakout, so.
Oh, shoot.
So I appreciate the link, and I just was curious, where in the link do you find the specific dates?
So if you click on, here, I can even pull it up. If you click on the application for, let me just share my screen. That's a good idea that we should have done anyway. Let's see. Are you seeing the right page, Courtney?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So when you click on that link, you'll come to this, and it's got lots of information in these little drop downs about some of the things that we've talked about. But if you scroll down, you can either look by each county up here, but there's a brochure and schedule here for each site. So you'll just look for your county. That'll tell you which site you're in, and click on this brochure and schedule. So this one is just for site 1, but as an example, it'll look like this. And on the second page, it's got the specific dates for your site.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So the virtual dates are the same for all sites, of course, but the in-person dates will vary by site. Great question. Thank you. Wonderful. Well, happy to stay on for a couple minutes if anyone needs it, and otherwise we'll want to respect your time and get you out on time. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for the alumni panel for sharing your thoughts. We love you all so much, as you know. And thanks to Lucille and Courtney for helping to run this little session. And stay on if you'd like to ask more questions. And otherwise, feel free to unmute and say goodbye on your way out. And thanks for being here today. Really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks for coming today.
I had one last minute question
Thank you.
before I head out real quick,
Absolutely.
if that's all right. So in my position, a lot of my leadership is not necessarily towards staff, but more towards like volunteers.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you guys do through the program that touches on that, or?
Yes, for sure. So we don't have a specific like volunteer management session, that kind of thing, but a lot of the concepts that we use throughout, you could either use with staff, with donors, with volunteers, for sure. I'm thinking of all the adaptive leadership work, but even the inclusive conversations part, like how to sort of create conversations where you can bring out the best in your volunteers or staff or
I
board
just heard
member.
the
Yeah.
questions, so I stayed on. Nate, I work with volunteers as well.
Great.
So,
Yeah.
Perfect.
you can.
Yeah,
I
what do you
mean,
think, Jean?
it's multifaceted. I mean, it's so valuable information for personally, so like personal growth and how you interact with everybody just in general, and then, but my work is with volunteers, so it's definitely relevant. I don't work like with the board. There were a few topics that weren't, relevant for me, like Colleen was saying, so just take that one for what it's worth, but it's made a big difference in how I can approach the volunteers and kind of recognize the difference in leadership in that sort of role versus the difference in leadership versus, taking care of employees, which I do in a different position as well. So it's relevant in both. And also it's relevant if you have leadership above you, because you can consider their leadership and how it affects you and trickle down. So I'm just going to advocate for that as well. But goodbye, everybody. And so good.
Thanks. Okay, bye,
Bye,
Jean.
Jean.
Thank
Thank you
you.
guys.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for your questions, Nate. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. Have a
Reach
great
out
day.
if
Thanks,
anything else
Nate.
comes to mind.
Bye.
Bye-bye.